This is my favorite style of knife. It has a very long history in these United States of America, going back around the 1800s. Some say even farther back to French knives that were very similar. This is known as a Bowie knife. It's a rather large one, modeled after a version from 1911. I love this blade, and I rarely leave home without it. Did you know that James Bowie, or Jim Bowie as he was known by his friends, never left home without his Bowie knife? There's a reason for that. You see, he had that knife specially made by his brother before a duel between his friend and another man. It was made specifically to keep him safe, and it did its job. Although that day, James Bowie was pretty much jumped, and he took bullets and blades, even a sword cane to the chest. He somehow survived, surprising all the doctors that were around him. This is the amazing and true story of the Sandbar fight, and James Bowie's surviving and kicking some serious ass while he did it. The Sandbar fight, also known as the Vidalia Sandbar fight, was supposed to be a formal one-on-one duel, but it erupted into a violent brawl for all, involving a number of combatants. September 19th, 1827, midday. It took place on a large sandbar in the Mississippi River, a few miles north of Vidalia, Louisiana, and Natchez, Mississippi. The fight resulted in the death of General Samuel Cuny and Major Norris Wright. American pioneer and our folk hero, James Bowie, survived. I don't know how, as he was seriously injured in the fight. True grit. People like to argue to this day whether it happened in Louisiana or Mississippi. Well, it was Mississippi, you can rest assured. It didn't just happen out of nowhere. It followed conflicts that had occurred in central Louisiana. Members of a wealthy and established Wells and Cuny families, they were close relatives. They were also engaged in a continuous feud with many of the newer family in the region. The subjects of the disputes included competing financial interests, of course, allegations of vote fixing in a sheriff's election, dishonored notes, that means they weren't paying their debt, bad bank loans, and as rumored, the honor of a woman. It always involves a woman somehow. Several participants in the brawl had previously fought and engaged in duels even, fistfights, gunfire even. 2 previous attempts at resolving disputes by dueling had ended without resolution, either because they degenerated into shouting matches between seconds or, well, because a cowardly party failed to appear. It seems something that has always struck me as kind of funny. The duel that became the Sandbar fight was initially arranged over grievances between Samuel Wells and Dr. Thomas Maddox, both of Alexandria, Louisiana. And you know what? They both did very well, neither of them taking a scratch. It seems that others would die for them that day. They chose to fight the duel at a neutral site, eventually choosing a wide sandy shoal in the middle of the Mississippi River. Well, because it was outside of the jurisdiction of local law enforcement and less likely to be subject to pesky things like anti-dueling laws. Both Wells and Maddox, the primary duelists, were attended by seconds and several friends and supporters. Norris Wright, in particular, was known to be a violent man. In a previous encounter, Wright had actually shot Bowie. The intervention of observers prevented Bowie from then killing Wright. Afterwards, Bowie carried a sheath knife in preparation for a rematch, which occurred, of course, in the Sandbar fight. Wednesday, high noon, Wells and Maddox met on the Sandbar. They would duel by the formal rules at the time, with a lengthy delay between the exchanges of fire. The non-combatant witnesses, including the surgeons, kept a reasonable distance from the duel for the duration of the fight. Wells and Maddox each fired 2 shots, and as neither man was injured, they resolved the duel with a formal handshake. And that would have been that. At the conclusion of the initial duel, the party of 6, Wells, Maddox, McWhorter, Crane, Dr. Cuny, and Dr. Denny, prepared to celebrate surviving. They walked towards the remaining Maddox partisans. Because no participant of the duel had a violent relationship with that group, the duel participants were balanced in number, 3 each, and unarmed, with the exception of the seconds. Crane carried a loaded pistol in each hand. The duel participants were intercepted by the remaining Wells partisans. Crane now faced 3 additional armed men. Seeing this from a distance, the remaining Maddox partisans began running forward to join the group. General Cuny, who had previously fought with Crane, is recorded as having called out to him, "Colonel Crane, this is a good time to settle our difficulty." Crane fired then, missing Cuny but striking Bowie in the hip and knocking him to the ground. Cuny and Crane then exchanged fire, with Crane sustaining a flesh wound in the arm and Cuny dying from a shot to the chest, or the thigh, some stories say. James Bowie, pissed off now, rises to his feet, drawing his big knife and charges at Crane, who struck him so hard on the head with his empty pistol that it broke the pistol and sent Jim Bowie to his knees. He was dazed. Wright appeared, drew a pistol and shot at the fallen Bowie, missing him. Wright then drew his sword cane and stabbed Bowie directly in the middle of his chest, but the thin blade was deflected by Jim Bowie's sternum. As Wright was attempting to pull the blade free, Bowie reached up, grabbing his shirt, and pulled him down upon the point of his Bowie knife. Wright died quickly, and Bowie was shot again and stabbed by another member of the group. As Bowie stood, both Blanchard brothers fired at him, and he was struck once in the arm. Bowie spun and cut off part of Alfred's forearm. Carey fired a second shot at Bowie but missed. As the Blanchard brothers fled, Alfred was shot through the arm by Jefferson Wells, while Carey was shot by Major McWhorter without effect. The brawl only lasted 90 seconds, but it left Samuel Cuny and Norris Wright dead, and Alfred Blanchard and Jim Bowie badly wounded. The unarmed Dr. Denny was shot in a finger and the thigh. Others may have suffered minor injuries. Crane claimed that a bullet grazed the skin of his arm. In a twist, Crane helped carry Bowie away, with Bowie recorded as having thanked him, saying, "Colonel Crane, I do not think under the circumstances you ought to have shot me." One doctor reputedly said, "How Bowie lived is a mystery to me, but live he did." The 5 doctors who had been present for the duel managed to patch up Bowie's wounds. The dead and wounded, at least and perhaps all partisans, promptly crossed the river by boat soon after the death of General Cuny. There is much more to Jim Bowie's story, and to this account. Bowie, though, was seriously wounded in the confrontation, of course. According to one account, 2 bullet wounds, 7 stab wounds, and other injuries due to Crane's thrown pistol, or hammered-down pistol. Alternately, 3 bullets and 4 stab wounds, some historians say. We do know that he took many months to recover, and then he prominently wore a large sheath knife thereafter. Due to national attention drawn by the Sandbar fight, Bowie and his knife became well known throughout the country as icons of a rugged frontier lifestyle. It was said that Jim Bowie only used his knife in a fight twice, once at the Sandbar and once at the Alamo. One he lived and one he died. Thank you, Mr. Bowie. Thank you for your amazing knife, and thank you for teaching me that it is good to stick up for my friends, no matter the odds.